welcome in John Cast Podcast, episode in number 59. I'd like to thank my sponsor, Ian's Pizza in Madison. 3 locations in Madison. You got to go check them out. They've got one on State Street. They got one right next to the Coal Center too, in the Garver Feed Mill location. Excuse me. 3 locations in Madison, 1 in Milwaukee. It's Ian's Pizza. It's delicious. They're always switching up their different slices. The macaroni and cheese is a classic slice that if you have not tried, you have to go try it. Ian's Pizza, we're working on our next promotion. Also check out johncastpodcast.com. Sign up for my newsletter. You'll get the latest promotions or contests that we're running. In fact, here's one we're running right now. You can DM me on Twitter. My Twitter is @JohnAudiusRadio. If you're watching on Spotify or YouTube, it's right at the bottom of the screen. And first person that DMs me on Twitter, I'm going to hook you up with 2 tickets to the American Family Insurance Championship, June 10th through the 12th at University Ridge in Madison. I'll be there. I'll be there on Saturday. And so 2 tickets, yours. Just DM me on Twitter @JohnAudiusRadio. Simple as that. Pretty excited for today's episode because today's guest is the play-by-play voice of the Milwaukee Brewers on Bally Sports Wisconsin. You also hear him calling NBA games on TNT as well as NCAA tournament games too. And he's also the voice you hear on NBA 2K. Welcome, Brian Anderson, to the John Cast Podcast. What's going on, BA?
Hey, John Cast. I like it, man. Big studio and everything. You look good. Good to see you again, my friend.
Good to see you. You've got the fancy microphone. You've got the cool looking microphone right over there.
This is the what we call the BA 2K lounge. You mentioned NBA 2K, but this is actually in my basement of my home, and it's not a very big space, but it's perfect for what I do. It's like a 12x9 space that it's basically a recording studio. So I come down here and I throw on some headphones, and the whole rig's on this side, and I lay down audio tracks for NBA 2K. So I've been doing this since the pandemic. I actually built this myself during the pandemic. There was supposed to be a team of people to come in and build it. I was like, well, looks like I'm home for the next 4, 5, 6 months. Who knows? So I ended up through FaceTime and technology, and we put this together. So I use it for podcast and 2K and do all kind of voiceovers for the Brewers and for TBS. So it works out great, man. It's been a great little space for me.
Yeah, wow, that is amazing, Brian Anderson, that you're able to set up that whole thing I guess through FaceTime with some help, but that looks really fancy. And how often? So you're recording. How often does 2K say, "Hey, we need more stuff"?
Well, we get out about 2 weeks in advance, and then we'll lay out maybe 2 or 3 days, 2-hour sessions is kind of, the general rule. Sometimes if we're in crunch time, though, we'll bang out a lot more sessions. And I remember the first year I did it because I had to lay down all like the basic tracks, just he dribbles in, here's a shot, all of the mundane stuff, just to get a baseline. I think I did about 200 hours that year, but I only do about 40 to 50 hours a year now. And most of it is just at this point, changing the names and, as teams, like yesterday I did one, and it was just about all the new potential college players that I've already seen many of in the NCAA tournament that are going to be heading into the NBA draft. So, as you know, 2K is a monster game. It's the biggest sports game in gaming, and it's not just the actual game that you play, but they have all these narratives and these stories, and there's these backstories, and so that's really fun. So I get to do side by sides, very similar to what you and I are doing here, with guys like Grant Hill, with Doris Burke, with Steve Smith, Clark Kellogg, all the people that are part of NBA 2K from an analyst perspective. So we do a lot of side by sides where we don't have a game to look at, but we kind of create topics and pitch back and forth. So it's a blast, man. It's one of the coolest things I'm a part of, and I'm really honored to be a part of it too.
Yeah, that's really awesome. That's amazing. You get to be on the video game. Oh, and the other stuff you do is pretty fun, I guess.
Yeah, it's all fun. It's all great.
Yeah, that's good too.
And by the way, I got so into Badger volleyball last year, and I was really proud of you, man. And you had some great calls, and to go on a national championship run, those are rare things, as you know. But I tend to track as a fan towards sports I don't call or I've never called. So
Mhm.
I've never called volleyball. I've never called like Premier League soccer. I would never do that. Hockey. So I love just being a fan of those kind of sports when I'm not thinking about how I would broadcast it.
Yeah.
So I got totally into the Badger volleyball run. It was so great, man. I loved every minute of it.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, and thank you for those kind words. That was a blast, just being able to be a part of that. And I tell people this too. So I had a sports talk job that last summer I got let go, and so it allowed me, Brian, to really hone in on volleyball. I said, okay, I'm putting
Mhm.
everything into volleyball, and so this was the year that I kind of put 100% into it, as opposed to having two or three jobs at
Yeah, I
once.
get that. I get that. You can
Yeah,
go multiple layers, go
yes,
deeper and deeper.
it went deeper and deeper, and it was so much fun to be a part of. And you would be able to do it because you'd be on TV, and all you have to do on TV. Oh, by the way, that was awful. I didn't make it. I didn't mean to make it sound like all you have to do on TV.
Say the words.
You just say you say less is my point than on radio. You'd be great on radio too, but you'd be
I
great
did
on
9
TV.
year of radio, man. I miss radio.
Yeah. Okay.
That's how I started. I started in radio. I was doing a sports talk show host gig, and then I did minor league baseball play by play. So I was doing, for 6 months every year, I was doing 140 games plus playoffs if my team went to the playoffs. So I did 9 years of radio, and ultimately want to get back to the radio. I would love to do, especially baseball on the radio is one of the greatest art forms in our industry. And I think these direct to consumer coming on, DTCs we call them. I think satellite radio is. I think radio it's got a resurgence coming. It's my hunch. That's my take, my hot take for you, John.
Oh. Oh, I like that hot take, by the way. So you would love to be in the Brewers broadcast booth for radio?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I love what I do now, but ultimately, I'm talking, as I get further in my career. So I'm 50 now. This is my 16th year with
Okay.
the Brewers, and I miss doing radio. I came up as a radio play-by-play announcer, and like I said, baseball on the radio especially is
Mhm.
is the truest kind of creative outlet in our industry, in my opinion. Um, Not that all the other sports don't have their place, but there's something about baseball on the radio for me that I really enjoy. So I would love to be able to do a mix. I would love to be able to, um, do radio full time, even at some point. I love that part of it, and I haven't done it in so long that I miss doing it. Um, Obviously, I talk to our radio announcers quite a bit. I mean, Bob Uecker is gonna go on for as long as he's gonna go on, but,
Mhm.
at some point, I think definitely, being able to get back to my roots would be very intriguing.
Yeah, that would be really fun to hear you on the radio. I'm just saying, like, because you said it's different. Because right, I mean, tell me how the differences, because you've been able to do both. The main differences between doing it on the radio and television, because you called it an art form on radio.
Yeah, and I would say, I think and I had the same opinion when I only did radio for all those years, that television would be a little bit easier, but I can tell you that's not the case. Usually you hear that from those who only do radio. Television is, from what you see on the air, there's you minimize your words, but it's also more topic driven. It's more analyst driven. Um, I liken it to spinning plates. So you spin a plate, you put it on a stick, and on television you may have 10 plates you've got to keep spinning at all times. And what that may entail is producer, director, graphics people, all your tape room, those who are pulling together your highlights, the game itself, your partner, your sideline reporter. So you're in a lot more of a quarterback role, or point guard role is probably a better way to put it, where you're trying to distribute the ball, but you still got to be on time and make the calls. Radio, you don't have all those outside influences. You're watching the game. You can take it wherever you want to take it. You have the freedom to go wherever you want. So if you're confident in the language and you're confident in your ability to produce words without a script, which at this point in my career I am, that's the fun part, you know, to be able to just kind of go where you want to go and have this blank canvas. And of course, you're calling the plays as they happen, and you're describing the scene, but to have the freedom feels very enticing to me at this point, and that's something that I miss. I think you know, when I talk to my colleagues who do both, that go back and forth between TV and radio, you know, I think they feel very satisfied to do that, and I understand all of that, and I feel the same way. You know, I feel the same way thinking about what I would want to do in the future. But television, there's a lot going on, and it's an art form unto itself, where you're constantly having to keep multiple tracks of your brain going along the same rail, like they're on parallel tracks. And yes, you're calling a game, but yes, you're also listening to your producer, what's coming next, you know, as far as like topics or a graphic or a promo or all the things that you'd be familiar with doing radio all those years, especially on a talk show. So, you know, you got to keep the play-by-play eyes and mind going, and then you got to keep all the other stuff. And is your partner being set up properly and cashed in properly, and all those really technical things that when you get done with a telecast, you know, you're a little bit wiped out because your brain's been stretched for that whole time. It may seem slow. It's like that duck on the water, you know. You may be floating along, especially in baseball, but man, underneath the feet are paddling really fast. That's what TV feels like.
Do you feel mentally drained after a broadcast?
Yeah, I do. I feel like, and it's a good feeling. I mean, it's you know, you put everything into it. You know, it's funny when I go do the NBA or I do college basketball, I always walk away from those games feeling like I hardly worked. They're just, I don't know. There's the difference between baseball on television versus the NBA or college basketball on television. There's a stark difference, you know, in time and just the way you have to process the game. So yeah, you do feel that way, especially after a baseball game. You know, you get into a long baseball game, 3.5, 4 hour baseball game. You know, and I try to put everything into every inning. It's, you know, you think about, wow, what am I going to say for the next 4 hours? But as I tell young broadcasters, I don't really think of it that way. I always just, you know, I talk about inning to inning or the assembly line mentality. And if you just stay in the moment, stay fully present, each pitch, each inning, get to commercial to commercial, you know, and then at the end, you can look up and see what you've been able to accomplish or how you've done. But that's when you feel it, when you're done and you're driving home or you're flying back to your home. You're like, wow, man, you know, I feel like that's a good feeling that I've kind of given everything I've had, at least from my brain's perspective. My dad always says, he goes, man, you're going to live forever. Your brain is so fully engaged because he's sat in the booth with me. He's put the headsets on. But I do enjoy it, man. And I notice when I'm not working games. So I've just been out for a couple of weeks. I had COVID, and so I haven't been working. I've been shut down. I couldn't pop a negative test, and so I've been taken off the grid here for the last couple of weeks. So it does, like, my brain doesn't work as well if I'm not working games and I'm not engaged and thinking. And it's amazing how many things that I leave around the house, or I can't find my glasses, or you know, it's just like I turn into Mr. Magoo when I'm not like active and working games.
Yeah, that is pretty crazy. It's like you're working your brain out and keeping it in shape,
Yes.
I guess. So let's talk a little bit about the 2022 Milwaukee Brewers. How would you describe the season thus far for the crew?
Well, the disclaimer is I've hardly been around the team.
Yep.
So I will say that I have my schedule is backloaded from June to obviously October. So coming off the NCAA Tournament, NBA playoffs, COVID, I've only seen them, you know, a handful of games live. I watch most all the games or listen to them when I can. So with that asterisk in place, I will say that I think they're I think they're a World Series contending team. And I say that, hoping I don't jinx it, but when you have a pitching staff like they've assembled in Milwaukee, you can beat pretty much anybody any day. And I think you can beat teams in a series. I think you can win 4 out of 7 games against any team. Even the great teams like the Dodgers and the Yankees this year are looking like one of those great teams. So that said, this is a window now, as the calendar turned from May to June. There's a few things at play. Number one, the Brewers have had or will have three city road trips. You've probably heard that on the broadcast. You've heard that from sports talk show hosts, but I'm telling you, that's a big deal. I've never seen it in 3 consecutive road trips being 3 city trips. Those are very taxing. The Brewers just played a sequence of 11 games in 10 days that included a doubleheader against the Cubs. Man, those kill your bullpen. That's when you start to get injuries, fatigue, all that. You don't have your facilities. You're not in your home surroundings. It's a challenge. Now they've got one more of those 3 city trips coming, and then the schedule will turn in their favor quite a bit. Then they lost 2 of their top 5 starting pitchers. They lost Peralta, who's going to be down for months, and Woodruff, who should be coming back soon. You lost your starting right fielder. You lost your shortstop. The guy who was replacing your shortstop, your everyday third baseman, has hardly played. So you start to look around. It's like, I'm kind of amazed that they're hanging around first or in first in this little window of time. I've been very impressed with this stretch of games that they've been able to play 500. I thought they were going to tank hard, just because you can see it in the bullpen. You're having all these major league debuts. You're pulling guys up from the minor leagues. You're stretching your rotation. So I always think about it in playoff perspective. So if you go into a 4-man rotation in the playoffs, which is typical, you don't need 6. You're going to put 2 of your top starters, 2 of your top 6 starters are going to go into the bullpen immediately. That immediately increases your level of success in the pen. And then you got Williams and Hader in the back end, and that's as good as it gets. So they're going to have to hit a little bit. I think they're going to need to make a move to pick up a bat. And I would say that would be like the primary piece to the puzzle, is to get a proven playoff tested bat that's going to cost you some prospects, maybe some pitching, very similar to what the Brewers did, giving up Rasmussen and Fireeisen to get Willy Adames. I mean, those were 2 really good pitchers that are still pitching very well for the Rays right now, but Adames has been a difference maker. And so you might have to do one more of those. And then I think the Brewers would be pretty full and a well-rounded roster if everybody stays healthy.
Yeah. Another difference maker is Christian Yelich in 2018 and 2019 specifically. What are people saying about Yelich and kind of the slump that he's been on?
I don't know. I don't think he's in a slump, actually. I hate to be callous. I think this is who he is now. I think he had 2 incredible years. It's hard to sustain that level of success. Yelich hadn't produced those kind of numbers as a Miami Marlin prior to that. Had 2 incredible years, got hurt, fractured kneecap, chronic back injury. He's not able to do the things that he would normally do to prepare for a game, as far as like the fatigue, wear and tear pieces, where, he can't take, 100 swings every day. I just think this is who he is. He's a good player. He's a very good baseball player. So I advise that we stop thinking about Christian Yelich as a superstar talent. He's a great teammate. He's a great asset to the organization, incredible in the community, put up 2 of the best years, back to back in Brewer history. He's just not that guy anymore. So he can be. There can be windows and weeks or a couple of days or a series where he goes off. But I think, he is kind of who he has been. I think he'll be better than he was 2 years ago, and he's probably be a little bit better than he was last year if you're hoping for a plus year. But that's just who he is. He's probably going to hit 230 to 250. He's probably going to hit 15 to 20 homers when it's all said and done. And he's fast. He's, his skills have diminished in the outfield a little bit. So that's just who he is. We got to get used to that. I mean, he's in a long-term deal, and that's just, we need to stop thinking of Christian Yelich as the highest paid superstar talent. that he was in 18 and 19. I would be shocked if he ever got back to that level again.
That's really interesting. I've got a couple more minutes with you, and I did want to ask you a couple broadcasting questions again.
Sure.
So when did you want to become a broadcaster? Was there a moment, or how did that progress where you're like, oh man, this is it. I want to talk into a microphone.
Well, I played sports all throughout, all my whole life. Even in college, I was a scholarship athlete in college. I played baseball. So in my mind, I always was fascinated with broadcasting, and it probably comes from my grandfather down to my dad. We would go watch games, or, let's say we're watching my older brother play. We wouldn't sit in the stands. We'd sit in the car, and we would listen to games on the radio, baseball games. So the way that our high school was constructed, you could park your car down the right field line or left field line, either way, and then we would just pull the car up and listen to games.
That's awesome.
So I did that all the time. I mean, that was just very natural thing for us to do, is watch my older brother play while I listened to the games. And then obviously I played as well. And so in high school, I started kind of doing like mock broadcast, not really thinking this was going to increase my skills or enhance my skills. I was just doing it to get a laugh. So I would be in the dugout and I would just kind of call plays, and I would do them in funny ways or give them different names, do different accents,
Yeah.
so it kind of evolved out of that. But then my teammates and my friends would say, man, actually, that sounds pretty good. You should maybe do that. And so then I go to college, same kind of thing. I go to college. I play baseball in college. I'm doing it in the dugout. And at one point, my head coach, who just retired, but he turns around and goes, damn, BA, that's pretty good. I go, oh, I wasn't trying to be good. I was trying to actually be funny. He goes, long story short, we shared a field with the minor league baseball team when I was in college in San Antonio. And he suggested, his name's Charlie Meagle, the head coach at St. Mary's University, said when the season ended, and we were a really good team, by the way, so we were playing deep into the playoffs every year. He suggested, he goes, why don't I get you connected with the radio announcer of the professional AA team that's here? I mean, I think you should pursue that. Sounds pretty good in the dugout. I'm like, I didn't know if he was trying to get rid of me or, so I did that. And because I stayed all summer and worked on the grounds crew and did all kind of stuff there. So I was already around all of it all the time. And then, like, long story short, I connected with that guy. He hired me when I graduated from college just to kind of help him. I had a technical background. I had done a ton of audio and camera graphics. I worked for a cable company in the studio. We did all like public access shows and talent shows and Spurs preseason games. So I had a lot of experience doing the technical stuff. So, I think he looked at me as an asset to help him set up all the equipment and do everything. So this is long before digital broadcasting. So this is in the early 90s. So that's kind of where it started. And then, after a couple of years of that, and I realized I wasn't good enough to play professionally, I thought there for a window I was maybe going to get drafted and get to play, and then I could play for a long time and, live out the dream, play in the major leagues, and then maybe be an announcer after that. But I had to go to plan B, and plan B was, okay, what can I do in this field? And so I started from scratch. I didn't even have a journalism school in my college. I was an English major. And so I just trial by fire, man. I went in, I recorded a bunch of mock games, and that's when I got serious, and then I would say there was the level of seriousness after I got the job, which was totally put in my lap, to do home games only. I was making $25 a game. I was also catching bullpens. I was throwing batting practice to the AA team, the San Antonio Missions. Yeah. Like I caught Chan Ho Park's first bullpen session in the United States. So that's that era of guys coming up. So anyway, 2 years into that, I realized, I was getting a lot of feedback, and people, I had a really bad, just kind of Texas hillbilly drawl, kind of talk like this, So I kind of had a voice up here in the register and talked out the side of my mouth. So I fixed that.
Okay.
I read this book called Change Your Voice, Change Your Life. I started to learn proper breath support and how to get the voice into the proper area, and
Wow.
that's when I really got serious. Like, I had an agent who's still my agent who said, "Man, your rhythm and timing, everything's great. Your voice sucks. You don't breathe. You get to the end of your voice too often." So I went about all those mechanical exercises to make sure I had the air coming across the
Yeah.
vocals for the resonance. And so once I kind of put the rhythm and timing and the feel for the game with the mechanics of broadcasting, remember I had no formal training, um, that's when it all kind of clicked. And then at that point, I was like, telling my wife at that point, I think I can actually make a run at this,
Wow.
and that's where it really started. There was definite phases. It was more hobby and like, whoa, I get to hang out with a baseball team and throw batting practice and be on the radio and like hang out with the players. And then it was like, okay, wait, this needs to be a career. Let's get serious about it. And then, oh, you can make money doing this? Like, what? Major league broadcasters make what? And so that was when I started
Wow.
to really get serious about it. It took me a long time to get out of the minor leagues, but once that happened, things went really fast, from the Golf Channel to the Brewers. 1 year with the Brewers. The next year, I'm on national TV with TBS. A couple years after that, I'm doing the NCAA Tournament and then the NBA. And so it took me forever to like get rid of the minor league job. But after that, it went pretty fast.
Wow. Don't forget about 2K as well.
Okay.
Change your voice, change your
Change your
life.
life. Yeah, it's a guy
I'm gonna look
by the
that up.
name of his name is you can go on Amazon right
Okay.
now. Forgot the author's name, but it's a $12 book. Change your voice, change your life.
Change your
You don't
voice.
need it, John. You got a great voice already.
I'm curious. I
You
want to
got
know
that
how to
big voice.
deep voice.
There's a
I
whole
have.
podcast on how to speak properly. This applies not just to broadcasters. This applies to everybody. This guy worked with like singers. He worked with Stevie Nicks and in the
Yeah.
80s, Lionel Richie, like all these famous singers. And I use a lot of these principles for myself. I still use them, the way you breathe. And, I've never lost my voice calling a game. Now, I've had allergies and whatnot that have knocked my voice out. But as far as fatigue, that used to happen to me all the time in the first few
Really?
years. But it never happens if you use it the right way. Your voice is a muscle and you strengthen it, and how you breathe and taking those full breaths in your diaphragm and passing it over your vocal cords. I mean, it's fascinating.
Wow.
And so I've taught so many young broadcasters
Yeah.
this principle. They think they're coming to me for play-by-play advice. How do you call a play? It's like, actually, it's not about the play. It's about being ready to have a diaphragm full of air when the ball goes sailing over the wall and you can punch right through it. Like those are the things that people don't talk about. So yeah,
I
I'm
think
totally into it. Totally
yeah.
into it.
I think I actually might want to just check that out. I think there are times I don't know if honestly, I don't even think about it. So when I've never once thought about breathing. I've just always just talked. So
Yeah, well,
there
you're
might be a
gifted
tip or two.
naturally. You don't have to. So
Okay.
I
Well,
would
there
say
might be a tip or two that
this book doesn't do anything for like play-by-play. This guy worked with singers.
okay.
What it does is it gets you in the proper place, your
Yeah.
posture, your voice. He calls it the mask.
Oh,
Um, it's I still use the principle. You'll read it in a day. I mean,
okay.
it's that big. It's nothing.
I love it
But
though.
the
I love it.
principles that he applies, if you don't think about it, if you're going into this world, especially if you're doing what I do, like for 10 years, I was doing 200 events a year. There's no way your voice can hold up to that. And I was starting to feel that in the early years, like, man, oh, my voice feels so thin, so it hurts, not sore throat, but just weak. So I had no choice. It's like, if you run a marathon, you better have good mechanics, good gait, or else you'll never finish the marathon. And for whatever reason, my path was to do all these games. And I'm telling you, man, it did change my life, because as I got used to this and it became habit, I started to notice like I had a completely different sound, the way I hear myself and the way people would hear me. And, now it was like, whoa, you get the feedback of, man, you're a really easy listen. Oh, your voice is interesting. It doesn't sound like anybody. You know, there's all the Vin Scully impressions and all the Matt LePay impersonators in Madison. You know, we all want to follow those that we appreciate. But to have your own sound is really important, and especially for the fatigue factor of getting through a long season or a game, or when you gotta punch it up. So it's
Wow.
interesting. Change your voice, change your life. I've sold more books for that guy. I should get some residuals, man.
You should get a percentage of that.
Yes.
Real quick, last question for you. All these games, all these different sports you've been doing, what has been your favorite moment that you've been a part of that you've been able to call behind the mic?
Well, there's a lot of them, you know. I mean, I love the simple things of, you know, I don't want to sound corny and weird, but so I love standing up for the national anthem at all these events I do, because I get to take a step back and look around and, oh man, I'm here, you know, whatever that is, whatever that's a, you know, a big playoff game in front of 20 million people, or whether it's a Tuesday Brewers game in August, you know, when there's 150,000 people watching. It doesn't matter to me. I just love soaking that in. I love going to the stadiums or ballparks, arenas. You know, when I arrive, fans aren't there yet and it's just quiet. Those are the things that I love the most. As far as like moments, I will tell you that every big moment I've ever called, there's that level of anxiety that you don't want to ruin that moment, that makes it hard to appreciate that moment. I don't know if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense.
In the Roy Halladay no-hitter, which is probably the game that put me on the map nationally, that was in 2010, man. I was scared to death. Like, that's when, back to that book, you start using your breathing techniques, because if you breathe rhythmically, and this is one thing I learned in that book, when you get into a rhythmic breathing, then that puts your heart in a regular pace, in a proper beat. And when your heart is in a proper beat, your mind is clear and you can think better. So that game, the Roy Halladay no-hitter in the playoffs of 2010 against the Cincinnati Reds, I was having to do that way more than I ever have, because I was having a hard time remembering Don Larson's name, like something that is so intrinsic in baseball lore, that I know he was the only pitcher at that time who had thrown a no-hitter in the playoffs. That was in a World Series, and it was a perfect game. But I was like, wait, is it Dan Larson? Is it Bob Larson? I mean, literally, like, my mind was locking up. So when you ask me, like, some of my favorite moments, every big moment I've called, Damian Lillard, the 3 to beat the Oklahoma City Thunder, that was a famous call. Ryan Braun's, you know, heroics with the Brewers all those years, like, those are all moments that I can remember how I felt in those moments. Like, don't screw this up, don't screw this up, don't screw this up. So I talked to Vern Lundquist about this years ago, and, you know, Vern Lundquist had this great call with Grant Hill passing it into Christian Leitner catching, turnaround jump shot, one of the most famous, iconic moments in NCAA tournament history. He's never watched that game back.
Really?
Not once. He says, I can't do it because I know what I was feeling and thinking. And it almost brings on a little like PTSD.
Yeah.
He said, I've never watched it. I've seen the call and I've heard the call, obviously, but I've never watched the game. And I kind of feel the same way. So, yeah, but, you know, like the Braun, the Halladay no-hitter, Justin Turner hit a walk-off home run in an NLCS game 2 against the Cubs one year. That was amazing, electric. Stephen Curry scored 17 points in a 5-minute overtime in an NBA playoff game in Portland. That was unreal. I was honored to call that. Being part of the match, you know, that was a cool thing, especially match 2, which raised $20 million for charity. And we did like a bubble broadcast, kind of the first of its kind. So yeah, man, those are like the moments that stand out. But honestly, it's the little things, those small windows when you're not on the air and you're just staring out at an arena or a stadium. Those are what I love. Like, I dream about those moments of that. There's a comfort in standing there and just looking out over an empty stadium, or during the national anthem when it's packed, but you're not responsible for saying words.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just take those moments. Like, I love that. I try to take pictures for a while. Then Matt LePay started making fun of me for taking pictures of the empty arena. So I quit doing that, and now he does it.
Now he does. Now it's a thing.
Yeah, it's a thing now. He made it a whole thing. He made me stop doing it. He shamed me out of it. Now he does it and turns it into a whole thing. Probably got a sponsor on it or something.
He took your thing, made you feel bad, and then took it for himself. That's fantastic. And by the way, a lot of what you're saying makes sense as far as like being in that moment. And like, that's why I want to get this book. I want to just be able to use some of these techniques.
Breathe it out, man. I'm telling you, you'll use the get your heart back in a good rhythm, man. That thing, I mean, I use that all the time. I use it on the golf course. I started studying so I'm every spring training, I'm hanging around guys like Robin Yount and, Paul Molitor and all these famous Brewers, and back then Hank Aaron at the time. And then I start working with guys like Kevin McHale and Chris Webber and all these legendary people, Grant Hill, all these Hall of Famers, and working with Cal Ripken Jr. in baseball and John Smoltz and Ron Darling. And so I started to I should write a book about this, but I started to ask them questions about how did they perform when they were in the fire, like in the middle of the arena or the stadium in the World Series. And man, they speak to it a little bit differently, but it was all basically the same thing. It was all about rhythmic breathing, get your heart back in order, and then allow your body to do what it wants to do. And it works the same in broadcasting. So,
wow.
I started writing all these little things down from these guys and applying them to my own career. And, I think, and it works. It does work. It's hard to be in a moment like that, knowing there are 20 million people watching an NCAA tournament game or an MLB playoff game or whatever it may be. But when you can kind of shed away all that stuff from the outside and just be in the moment, breathe properly, see what you see, say what you say, even if you make mistakes, it's okay. You're still in it. Like, you're fully in the moment. And I think that more than anything else has probably unlocked me as a broadcaster. Because we're all trying to make it at some level. When I was in the minor leagues, we're always thinking outside in. What is this person going to say about my call or my voice? Or because we want to make a living at this. We want jobs. We want to be offered jobs. So I've gone on a tangent here, but it is important. And I do talk about this a lot with young broadcasters, is deal with the mental side of things and how you are perceived and how you get into a game. And it's very similar to when you're an athlete. And that's the correlation I made. The one thing I was able to connect with all these great players I was working with, to do that to broadcasting, which I'd never heard before. I'd never heard any broadcaster say, hey man, you got to get your heart right. You got to get your breathing right. No one's ever said that. Then I read this book. I'm going, wait, if singers do it, you can see singers all the time, like take a moment, or like before a big note, they'll load it up, right? And they'll bang out the big note. Like, watch Adele sing. She's constantly filling up that diaphragm. And so I just started to apply those principles, and, not saying that for everybody. Let me know how it goes. You can be the beta test.
I'm definitely going to check it out, because
I noticed you sat up straighter as soon as I said that.
Yeah. I'm trying to get up a little straight, trying to breathe a little better.
Get that diaphragm full.
Exactly. Because during the national championship match for volleyball, toward the end of that 3-hour marathon, I was standing up, BA. I was hunched over, hands on knees,
worst posture you can have, by the way. Hunched over, hands on knees.
I know. And
so now now next year's national championship run, you can stand. I stand a lot.
Yeah.
But you still got to stand. You can't be hunched over. You got no air if you're hunched over.
All right. So next year's national championship call will be even better.
Yeah.
Because I'll be more prepared.
You're going to have that diaphragm wide open, man. You're going to be full of air.
Boom. All right. Awesome. BA, thank you so much for this. I know we had some technical stuff at the beginning, but the second half flowed perfectly. So thanks for your time. We'll do it again.
All right, John. Great to see you, buddy.
All right. Thank you. That is Brian Anderson. You hear him on the Brewers broadcast on Bally Sports Wisconsin, NBA, NCAA tournament games. He does NBA 2K Does it all. Thanks for listening to episode 59. Remember, if you want a pair of tickets to the AmFam Championship, just DM me on Twitter at John Audius Radio, and I'll hook you up with a pair of tickets, limited supplies. And also thank you to Ian's Pizza in Madison with the 3 locations in Madison, 1 in Milwaukee, Seattle, and Denver as well. And check out johncastpodcast.com for all the latest contests, promotions, events going on with this podcast. And once again, thanks to Brian Anderson, and thank you for listening to the John Cast Podcast. See ya.